Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Town Board meeting, July 10th, 2023. Ask you please rise for salute to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. And I'd like to mention, just thoughts and prayers go out to those affected by the accident this morning, the horrific crash on I-87. I believe it resulted in a fatality, so thoughts and prayers to everyone that's involved in that. It was absolutely terrible and resulted in a backup on 87 and Route 9 earlier this morning for quite a while. First item on the agenda is to accept the minutes from 6/26/23.
So moved.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Comments from town board department heads. I do have just quickly a few things. I do have Ray Lynn, our assessor, here tonight. One of the board members had requested some additional information on some low-income for seniors, information in terms of any type of tax breaks that they may get. So we do have that, Ray Lynn, rather, in attendance tonight to answer those questions and anything else that comes up. Ray Lynn, if you want to address that.
Okay, you'll just have to let me know what the questions are.
Well,
I thought I was here for the volunteer firefighter one,
well, you're here
know
for
that.
that, you're here for that one too. I think John had some questions for the one on seniors.
The request was to put the matter on. You had indicated to us that there was the opportunity to adjust the amounts
Right.
for eligibility.
Yes.
And I had asked that we take that matter up to consider whether we should expand the limits, right? So
That's
that
my suggestion, that we follow suit with most of the towns around us that have increased those limits. Saratoga County recently adopted a resolution to increase those limits, and I believe I sent those to you. We haven't increased our limits since like 1997, so I believe the maximum income for 50% was somewhere around 26,900.
Have we historically tried to stay in sync with the county?
The county was the lowest. We kind of were we were second in line, and then the schools had higher income limits than we did. Being that the county now has raised their limits, we've always been higher with our income limits than the county has, so I would suggest that we either match those or increase them. Boston Spa hasn't taken it up yet. We usually match Boston Spa with a lot of our exemptions. Like I said, with these, the low-income senior and the disabled, low-income disabled, we've been at the bottom line for quite a while. 1997 was the last time we increased those limits.
Ray Lynn, did the county just recently raise theirs?
I believe
Was that a
they
few
did it
years ago?
last year.
Okay.
I mean, it's hard to objectively know what's right. It seems like, in my view, we seem to be too low.
Yes,
And,
I believe
yeah.
that too.
I guess, the one question is staying at the same level as the county helps in administering the exemption, right?
Correct. Even though we don't have a town tax per se right now, if we ever were to have a town tax that included special districts and things like that, it would definitely help them out. I think, with the way inflation has been recently, everything is going up. It's only logical for us to help the senior citizens.
Do we have is there any fiscal budgetary impact for us to go to the county's number?
No,
I don't see why we wouldn't do
No.
it then.
I agree.
Opinion.
That's kind of where I would be too, for time being, yeah.
All set with that?
Sure.
Board members, that would require a amendment to the local law, so there would be legislation and public hearing. So we can, again, get something out to the board members to review. But just so the public's aware, there will be further engagement.
And that would be in effect with taxable status next year,
Correct.
next March, yeah. okay.
Correct. Anything else?
Very good for now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raylan.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Just real briefly, I attended the Saratoga. Sorry about that. The Malta, sorry Kathy, the Malta seniors luncheon this afternoon at the Hyatt, and ran into a few familiar faces, actually quite a few. But anyway, it was a good time. There was a fair number of people. I was impressed by the number of seniors that we have to attend these events, and it was a meeting, not a bus trip. So that was impressive, and got to speak with them briefly, and then parted on my way. But nonetheless, hopefully we will be in a place and time where we'll be able to accommodate our seniors so they don't have to go to the Hyatt or other places. Like the rest of the town, our town government's growing, our buildings are not growing. So we have to get through with the business that we have at hand with our department heads and the utilization of this room, so that kind of prohibits that. But nonetheless, it was a good time, and it was nice chatting with some of the seniors. That's about all I have. Anyone else have anything?
I got none.
Good, bad, or indifferent?
Nope.
Nothing to the left? Anything from our department heads? Kristen?
We had, last Thursday was the first day of Malta Summer Rec, which is our half-day program where we have probably over 300 kids come to camp at Malta Community Park and Shinataha, and it went off well. We canceled today because of the rain, unfortunately, but we'll be back out again tomorrow. And we also have the summer concert series, which started last week. This Wednesday at 6 o'clock, we have Mark Gamshaker and the Luster Kings. They're like
Swing.
like an Elvis, rockabilly type. So come visit us there.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Kristen. Raj, you have anything? No. Roads look good, by the way.
No snow anywhere.
No need for salt.
No one else has anything? Comments or questions from town residents?
I can't miss the opportunity to talk.
You were first this time, too.
Yeah, I jumped right up. So Cynthia Young, I live on Colomer Drive. I was very pleased tonight to see on the agenda that you may be acting on the long-awaited comprehensive plan. It's, in my review, I see there's really no substantial changes from the plan that the committee put forth, so I was pleased to see that the committee did a nice job. A couple of areas, in my opinion, you have actually strengthened the plan. I think you've strengthened the protections for open spaces by downzoning some places, particularly the Malta Ridge area and Brownell Road. There's also areas where you added language up on architectural standards in the gateway districts and buffering, improved buffering for residential areas. There are a couple of changes that I kind of personally wish you hadn't made. I've talked about this before. You eliminated a housing needs assessment. I feel strongly that we don't really know what we don't know. Do we have enough adequate housing for seniors? Do we have the right kind of housing to be able to, for our businesses to be able to find staffing locally? And like I say, we just don't know what we don't know, and so I'm sorry to see that not moving forward. There's two other things that you eliminated that I didn't have it in my notes from the workshops, and I don't recall why, just to mention. One of them was the draft plan recommended, or discussed the fact that the Nelson Avenue Rowley Road, Malta Avenue Extension Loop. It's about a 5-mile loop. It's popular with cyclists. And the original plan from the committee recommended that we try to have some sort of bike lane there to make it safer for cyclists. Like I said, I don't really recall why, in the conversation, why that was stricken, but it seems like it would be a nice amenity for families to be able to use that loop. The other thing you struck that I really don't quite understand was to cooperate with Stillwater to improve pedestrian access along 9P. The plan from the committee specifically says Browns Beach, but it seems to me that now that Mangino's will be a park, that pedestrian improvements on 9P are even more important for the residents of the town of Malta. That being said, I hope that you certainly vote to enact this plan so we can start moving forward with the rest of the process. So, thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Anyone else wish to speak?
Hi, my name is Susan Nuttall. I live in Luther Forest. I just have one very quick question. Last meeting, you were explaining the SCQR that had to happen with the town, with the plan, right? I was just wondering how long we have any idea how long that process takes? A secret, yeah, SCQ, right?
Steve?
I didn't know what it meant. I mean, I know what it means. I just wouldn't remember the words. up
Well,
here.
there's a resolution on for the board to consider tonight, and they'll
Right.
be addressing the matter tonight. So it depends on the board's review of that and if they feel it's adequate or not.
Okay, and then it goes to SCQ? I don't understand the process. I guess that's basically what I'm asking you quickly. So if the board approves it tonight, which would be great, then it has to go through this.
No, before the board can approve the comprehensive plan, they have to adequately address the seeker.
Okay,
Okay, so they're going to consider it tonight and review it tonight, and if they're comfortable with their environmental findings, they can approve the plan.
okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, good evening, Kathy Mason, 11 Stony Point Road. This concerns the South Shore Marina proposal. The Saratoga County Planning Board has reviewed the proposal and has requested 3 items before they will consider whether to approve the project. The items are an updated traffic study to be performed during the summer months, visual renderings with a view shed analysis from Saratoga Lake to look at potential visual impacts, and drawings that indicate the location of slopes on the property that exceed 15%. So my question is, now that you've received these requests, what will be the protocol in moving forward?
You want me to answer, Steve? I can.
Yeah, I can answer whatever you want.
Go ahead.
All right. So the requirement for the referral to the county planning board is for that process to be completed. Based upon the letter from the county board, it's their view that it's not been able to be completed. What we as the town would be looking for, and the board, I think will be looking for, is for the applicant to address the concerns of the county planning board, so both the town board and the county board can consider it.
So is it possible that you might decide not to follow through with the requests of the county planning board before having a public hearing regarding the project?
I mean, sure, it's possible, but I don't think that's this board's intent.
Okay, good. When is the soonest you might have a public hearing, do you think, regarding the project?
I'm not able to answer those questions right now. This matter isn't on the agenda. You can relay the questions to the board, and it's not on the agenda this evening. And I can't answer hypotheticals of when things can be on any particular board.
But the normal protocol would be that if the planning board has requested more information, you would get that information, get it back to the planning board, get their approval or disapproval before you would move forward?
There are variables, as Steve pointed out too, that affect the timeframe. This would be information that the applicant has been asked of by the county. So it would depend on when that information is relayed to the county, how long it takes for the county to go through that information, and then how long before we actually are notified of what the county feels is sufficient after that point. So as Steve pointed out, there's really no way of saying it would be 3 weeks, it would be a month. It's however long
Okay.
it takes.
Well, my bigger concern was just to make sure that, I was hoping that the protocol would be that those 3 things that they requested would be taken care of, go back to the county planning board, find out what their feeling is before anything further
And
happened.
that would be dependent upon the applicant, not the town. That's not something they're asking of the town, it's of the applicant in this case, for them to
Okay.
do that. So depending on when they do that, and whether or not the county is satisfied with the information that's been provided to them, and again, how long it takes for them to go through it, all of those things, each one of those steps would determine how long it is. And then, of course, there's the scheduling with when it can get on the agenda, when it can go before the board, and so on. So it is really difficult to determine. We run into that problem a lot just internally with how long this will take or that'll take, because we don't know some of the answers to the questions that we have along with our scheduling. So it's really hard to determine.
Okay. No, I totally understand that. I guess my concern was that there could possibly be a public hearing before these, items were tended to and
We're
went
not
back to the
gonna
planning
act-
board and,
We're
I'm
not-
not planning on that at all.
We're not going to act on anything
okay.
until the applicant does what the county wants to see, and the county makes a determination. Before we ever get that information back to us, we're just on a wait status.
Very good, very good. Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Paul Mason. I live on Stony Point Road. I have a request of not necessarily the board, but of the town, in as much as, and this is to do with the South Shore Marina, in as much as none of the documentation related to the PDD has been updated since May of June of last year. It's all dated May, June 2022. And in particular, the drawings, I feel need to be updated, particularly the big building on the north side is still shown as 3 stories. The site rendering drawing for that South Shore Marina area shows the perimeter of that site right at the edge of the asphalt of Route 9P. I believe there should be a setback. I'm not really an expert in that area, but the buildings on the other side do show setbacks. Building B on the south side of 9P appears to be shown in a flat grassland area. In reality, that's going to be up against a pretty steep hillside. The same for the building on the other side of Plains Road, which isn't shown at all. And I just, I'd like to see updated, accurate information that we can all hang our hat on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Peter Brooks, Nelson Avenue Extension. I apologize if this sounds a little formal, but trying to cover a lot of ground but be brief, I put a bunch of energy into writing down what I was going to say, so I'm just more or less going to read it to you, if that's okay. I speak to you tonight as a resident of Malta and as someone with academic training and professional experience in land use planning, so I kind of know something about what I'm talking about here. By the way, I also wanted to say congratulations on reaching the end of the process with a comprehensive plan. I expect you're going to adopt it tonight, and I think it's well done. And I know it's been a long slog, and my congratulations on getting there. I came tonight, though, to speak about South Shore Marina, which, by the way, does not fit in with a comprehensive plan. But the County Planning Board's recent letter to the town about the proposal notes its continuing concern and requests more information, which we've already heard about, traffic, visual impacts, things like that. I wanted to talk to you about visual impacts tonight. Specific things the county letter asked for were things called a view shed analysis from Saratoga Lake and other visible areas around the lake, and also an evaluation of visual impacts is needed for a proper review under seeker. Those were their words. Now, those words don't come out of the blue. Quote, a proper review under seeker means, as I'm sure many of you know, getting answers to specific questions that are on the seeker environmental assessment form. One of those questions is, quote, is the project site within 5 miles of any officially designated and publicly accessible federal, state, or local and scenic or aesthetic resource, unquote. Well, at present, on the environmental assessment form, the box after that question for this project is checked no, which is incorrect. The consultant who filled out the form, hired by the developer, apparently is not aware that Saratoga Lake is, in fact, an officially designated and publicly accessible federal and state scenic and aesthetic resource. I only recently discovered this myself. That designation is made in New York State Law, Executive Article 42, if you want to look it up, which names Saratoga Lake as one of many major inland waterways in the state, which, and I'm really abbreviating this to save everybody's time because the law goes on and on and on. But to quote, it says, these inland waterways are unique with a variety of natural, recreational, ecological, cultural, and aesthetic resources of statewide and national significance, end quote. And Saratoga Lake is specifically mentioned as, listed as one of those inland waterways. And by the way, Article 42 also says, when it's talking about this, quote, that all these inland waterways are unique with all these resources, and the definitions are inland waterways shall mean all those states' major inland lakes, and then it lists them all, with the adjacent shorelands, end quote. Okay, so the point is, an inventory and analysis of the impact of the scenic and aesthetic resources of Saratoga Lake is not only being requested by the County Planning Board, but I think we all need to be aware it's also required by state law. How does one do a visual impact assessment? Well, the professional tools for this have been developed just over the last few decades. There's computer software, there's 3D modeling, and a host of new measurements. On the subject of visual aesthetics and scenery, it is no longer correct to say that beauty is only in the eye of the beholder. It turns out that there is a widely held consensus across all populations about landscapes and what enhances or degrades them. We can measure and identify and even quantify these things. But you can't just hire an engineer or an architect to do a visual impact analysis. They don't know how. This is a specialty skill. It needs an expert. Fortunately, there are experienced, credentialed experts available, usually with a background in landscape architecture or planning of some kind. Presumably, the developer of South Shore will be asked, because of the letter from the County Planning Board, to go produce further reports about traffic impact, visual assessment, stuff like that. So he's going to go hire somebody. Unfortunately, in the business of development, consultants' reports are often influenced by who pays for them and reflects the interests of their employers. It's very natural. Knowing that reality, most towns, like Malta, can't afford to keep many experts on staff, so they contract with outside professionals. Independent consultant engineers and attorneys routinely provide review and comment on the reports paid for by developers. And it's the responsibility of those consultants hired by the town to represent the interests of the town, not the interests of the developer. This is already a quite routine part of Malta's planning, zoning, and project review process. I'm here tonight to recommend to you that you do the same thing in this case. You, the town board, are going to decide on whether or not to approve this project. When the developer drops his consultant's visual impact analysis on your desk, which may very well claim that there are no significant visual impacts to worry about, how are you, town board members, going to critique it? Do you have the tools, training, and experience? With all due respect, may I suggest that you don't, and neither does our building or planning staff. Again, this is a specialty and it's a new area. The solution is obvious. Just as engineers and attorneys, in this case, you need to hire an expert to make an informed decision about this project and to avoid any later suggestion of making any arbitrary or capricious decisions about this project. I'd like to recommend tonight that you hire an independent expert, one who has credentials and experience in conducting and critiquing visual impact analyses. These experts exist. With just 2 phone calls last week, I found someone who appears to be very qualified and has acted in exactly the role discussed here as consultant to towns in New York State to review visual impact statements. I'm not connected to this guy in any way. I only spoke to him for the first time by phone last week, but he's an example of the type of expert you need to look for. And I'd like to now just give a copy of his resume to Jen so that when she gets a chance, she can make copies of it and give them to you so you can just see what's out there. And of course, with some looking around, surely you can find a number of qualified consultants to choose from. Thank you. That's all I had to say. Are there any questions? Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? I kind of thought Kathy Iceman was going to pop up somewhere.
Wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't.
I know, and you do a great job.
Thank
Like I
you.
told you today, you do a good job with the seniors.
Thank you. Yeah, Kathy Eitzman, Malta Senior President. We had a great time. We had 90 seniors that had signed up, and we had a rousing social game of hand and foot with 16 seniors after that. So our games still continue on Monday and Thursdays. So if you're looking for your senior, or if you are a senior and would like to get social and enjoy your life to the best it can be, let us know. I think that's it. We are not meeting in August because we've grown to 80 to 90 people at our meetings, which is a great thing. So I appreciate the fact that you have searched and we have searched repeatedly. So we'll try to put something in place, but finding a venue for our August meeting would impact our budget considerably. So we could not do that. So I apologize that wanted to get together in August. We will be doing a trip. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Anyone else have anything? Comments, questions, anything? Okay, then we'll move on to town business at this point. First item on the agenda is to approve the Maltaville Water District bond. That is for the district we've created in Maltaville.
So moved?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the determination of the SECRA for the adoption of the town master plan. And I do have the EAF, the assessment form, the short form in front of me, and I'll go through it. Question number 1, will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations?
Hey, Mark,
Oh, I'm sorry.
before you go down that path completely, you're certainly welcome to, but I think there's a preliminary step that's been contemplated in the resolution,
Okay,
which is that the town of Malta has a townwide generic environmental impact statement and finding statements. And
that's this one right here?
yeah. So we've reviewed that and reviewed it with planning staff and council, and have making a recommendation to the board that the minor changes in our comp plan are consistent with the prior findings, and that based upon that and the minor changes, there may not be a need for further seeker consideration.
Okay,
So that's what's proposed in the resolution before the board. Jamie from Planning Department is here as well, if the board had any questions, or
okay.
it might be a preliminary matter to consider.
Sure, thank you, Steve. No, I thought we had to go through the EAF before we got to that point, so that's that was my bad.
Yeah, it's up to the board. I mean, you certainly can consider the document. It's been provided. It's been with the board for several months. But I just think preliminarily, there's a prior a finding or a conclusion that can be made with respect to it, if the board's comfortable.
Mark, may I?
Yes, John.
As I understand, the concept is, somebody mentioned earlier, I believe, that we in fact have downzoned areas of town. In other words, reduce the amount of development potential. So as I understand it, the way to look at this is that in the aggregate, the environmental impacts from implementation of this plan are going to be no more and conceivably could be less than the impacts from the existing zoning that's already provided for in our generic environmental impact statement. That's kind of the way I think about it. And therefore, we can, on the basis of reduced environmental impacts that would result from this plan update, we can rely on the existing seeker record. That's how I'm thinking about it, and you tell me if I'm
I think
missing the point.
sorry to cut you off. Yeah, I do think that's an important consideration for the board, but it's not the entirety of it. I mean, there are other changes besides the downzoning and other ones that have potential impacts, and planning staff and has reviewed those as, to a certain extent, as have I. For example, in the resolution and for the board to consider is there are some minor changes to allow, for example, expanded auto-oriented uses by the exit 11. And well, would that change create new or differing environmental impacts than what was considered under our townwide GEIS and finding statements? And in looking at that, I think the planning staff's recommendation is that no, it wouldn't. And if the board agrees, and then secondly, with the overall fact that the town of Malta has continually made changes to its plan, obviously the comprehensive plan is a written document here, but it's more than that. It's an accumulation of all the things we've done in Malta with respect to our zoning, and it's been updated along the way. Our findings, we have a townwide GEIS, and now we're adding to that with these changes. And as John's pointed out, most of the changes would result in potentially downsizing and less impactful environmental considerations. So step one is that, and then step two, are there any other changes within the comp plan that the board thinks would merit further seeker review? I hope that.
And with that being said,
And excuse me, ma'am, the floor is with the board. The floor is with the board. It's not the time for public to comment. Correct. So,
as I started to say, with all of that being said, would there be harm in going through this short form? Although I see, and I believe there's a lot
no,
of merit in what
I didn't
John
mean to
said.
suggest you can't. I just
Right.
wanted to have the board be aware of what's before you and what options you have. And if you had further comments or questions, I'm willing to answer them or as planning.
Right, and if the board is okay with it, I would prefer to go through the short form.
That's fine.
If the board doesn't want that to happen,
Mark, I'm not sure I'm disagreeing with you yet. I gotta get caught up here in my simple mind with, are these alternative choices, Steve, that we adopt the resolution that's drafted here that essentially says that the action is substantially within the confines of the existing seeker record, and therefore no further seeker review is required. That's what I understand this resolution to say. Mark is saying we are going to do an environmental assessment. And if we do the environmental assessment, what would the next step be after that? Wouldn't it be to make a significance determination
Yeah, I agree. Generally, that would be the process that would go through, is to make a significance determination. The resolution before you says that that's not necessary. If the board feels otherwise, you certainly can proceed with your environmental review. And in considering those things, I'm not sure it would change the analysis that's been done to date, that seeker review is not required. You'd be then saying, you know what, we as a board, we can consider seeker more fully, and we want to. So I don't mean to say it's an either or, but
So basically, I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
The resolution that you've drafted doesn't fit then. If we go through the EAF, we would have to act, if we make a determination of non-significance, it's not going to look like the resolution that's presented here.
I agree with that, John.
Okay,
So then, so that I understand, so then if I read through the short form, then that would negate the resolution to actually move forward on the comp plan itself?
Well, I don't mean to say it would negate it. It's just that
Would
the
it hold
resolution
it
that's
up?
proposed before the board does not address all the factors that may come up in that review. So that could require either new resolution to be drafted, amendments to the existing resolution to be made. It's up to the board on how they want to proceed. But planning and legal have looked into it and feel that if the board agrees that the changes that are contemplated by the adoption of the comprehensive plan do not require further seeker review.
So I think, just if I could interject, so I understand, if we pass this resolution, we don't go through the short form seeker, and we can proceed with approving the comp plan tonight. However, if we go through the short form, will that delay us in approving the comp plan? Or can we adopt a simple resolution of?
No, you could still
non-significant-
approve it if, depending on what your review of that is. Now, reviewing it now in the public, going through all those questions is for the board to make determinations. This has been part of the record for a while. It has hopefully been reviewed and looked at. And if you're not comfortable with the findings or the recommendations of planning and legal, and you want to take a more expansive review and go through that process, it would require changes to the resolution that we have, or not. Maybe you're not comfortable after going through it. It's not that those things aren't important to consider. It's that we have, as an alternative to the environmental assessment form, we have a townwide generic environmental impact statement that considered all sorts of things in the original adoption of the plan, and as it's been amended, how growth would impact the environment. And what this is saying is, when we look at the new changes and we compare that to that townwide generic impact statement, that there aren't substantial or changes that merit further environmental review. They're within the thresholds and determinations of our current plan. So that's what's before the board. If the board is not comfortable with that, certainly the board has the power to go through the form, and then we can address changes to our resolution and handle it accordingly. Does that answer your questions?
One more question, I hope. So if we're to vote on the first resolution, which would essentially render the short form basically unnecessary, we vote on that and we move forward on the comp plan, we vote on that, can this short form then be made public to help let folks know that this is what we've felt necessary and what we've looked at to achieve the position that we've arrived at, to substantiate it?
That is part of the record. It's on the record already. It's been on the record. So I don't think it's a matter of it not being public. It's available on the website. It was
So the
published.
folks know what's on this short form. It's not that something's being hidden. It's just that reading this would deviate from what we have in place, which could essentially, as I understand it, hold up approving this comp plan.
Well, a couple of things, just for the public's benefit. So the town of Malta has already adopted a more expansive environmental findings through our townwide GIS and the finding statements that have been updated over time. So we've endeavored to consider environmental impacts of the existing comp plan, of our zoning, and of within the town of Malta. We're now amending our comp plan to address changes that have occurred since then and things that the town board now values and thinks, okay, since this has last been updated, let's make some changes. But we have this environmental plan within Malta
Right.
that exists presently. So the step one is to review that and to say, is the adoption of this plan consistent with that?
Consistent with it.
Or are there substantial changes that require new environmental considerations? That's what this resolution contemplates. The normal process, if you didn't have a townwide GIS, would be you'd have to go through.
Have to go through the short form.
Well, it could be a long form.
Right.
Your environmental assessment. Because we've endeavored to do that already, and these changes are not so substantial, if the board agrees, then you don't have to do it again in that, or do it with respect to this comp plan.
Right.
That's what's.
I
before you.
understand. I want to make sure that the folks understand that that's the logic behind this.
Mark, I'm comfortable proceeding as has been suggested by our council and staff here. I don't want to put pressure on anybody else. I respect people's right to disagree, but my own kind of impression is, as I said, that we're,
We're
in
consistent with what we,
a substantial way, we're consistent with the existing seeker record.
right. Rest of the board's feelings on that?
That's fine.
In agreement? Okay.
I would move the resolution then.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion is carried. Thank you very much, folks, for that. And ma'am, there will, at the end of the meeting, there will be another public comment section where you can stand up. Thank you. Next item is to actually adopt the town comp plan.
So moved?
Second?
Discussion?
I just, a couple quick things. One, want to thank the committee for all the work that they put in to get us here. This took a lot longer than everybody wanted, but, we did have that little global pandemic that popped up in the middle. And the amount of public exchange that took place on this was fantastic. The number of meetings that took place and the give and take. And I know a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into it with our staff, with our consultants, with the committee. So thank you all for the work that you put in. I do agree with Cynthia's points about the housing needs assessment and pedestrian access, but I think as a whole, this comp plan update is a good thing. One thing I would ask and hope that we can figure out in the future is start thinking about some sort of a broader pedestrian plan in the town. We are now seeing, as we look around town, there's a much broader set of connection points around our neighborhoods, around our sort of main areas of commerce and our parks. And I think with some of the projects that we have coming into view and on the horizon, we have an opportunity to really greatly expand pedestrian access to a number of the things that make Malta great. So that is something that I think, while it may not be necessarily directly involved in the comp plan itself, I think it's something we should all challenge ourselves to think about and figure out the right way to tackle. But I just wanted to thank everybody for all the great work that they put into this, and I'm glad to see that we're finally at the finish line.
I think a bunch of us are, and thank you, Tim. I couldn't agree more. I mean, there was a lot of hours that went into this between the committee, between the workshops that we had, different hurdles that we had along the way. And what really made me, I think, happiest of all is, to Steve's point and what John had mentioned, we're actually even more environmentally friendly, I believe, through this comp plan than the one previous. Downzoning, land conservation areas, was created a lot of things that we've promoted, more focus on our watershed corridors, actually protecting those areas through development, trying to put in place more stringent zoning. I think is a testament to the fact that we understand that we need to take care of not just our town, Saratoga Lake, everything that flows downhill from here is impacted by what we do. So I'm very happy.
And your setbacks.
And the setbacks. You know, you remembered that, huh?
Yes, I
And
do.
buffering,
That's it.
my favorites.
Very
So,
well.
yes, I'm very happy. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. When do we start on the next one now? Speaking of buffers, do we give ourselves a buffer to start the next one?
5 years.
Yeah, long overdue. I'm very happy. Next item on the agenda, folks, is to authorize town manual amendments. We just had a few, nothing major. A lot of it is just basically housekeeping in our manual, so
So moved?
we have that.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda was actually brought up a few years ago prior to me. Some of the board members present remember it. It had to do with some memorial plaques installed in near the Luther Forest athletic fields. Basically, it was just making note of the folks that made that whole area possible through their endeavors, through their work. And the board then agreed to have these memorial plaques put up. We were waiting on lighting for our fields that we have now. So now that that's done, I'd like to move forward on that and complete that page.
So moved?
Second?
Discussion.
Just very briefly, as I said in our last meeting, Global Foundries would not be here without Joe Bruno and Ken Green, and God rest both their souls. And they gave their heart and soul to this project, to Luther Forest, to bringing AMD, then Global Foundries here. And we would not have the things that we have in the town of Malta today without them. So really glad that we're going to be able to honor both of their legacies for all their hard work, all their dedication, and their love of Malta and Saratoga County.
I agree. Well said, Tim. And the beauty is, these are not going to be obtrusive. I mean, they're going to be basically large boulders with a small bronze plaque on them, and they're going to be out of the way. But at least they're there so that folks can read it and maybe learn a little bit about what it took to get those fields and get the LFTC in general. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And as motion is carried. Thank you. The next is the water agreement that we have with Saratoga County, with our athletic fields.
So moved?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion is carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the firefighter and volunteer ambulance worker exemption that was brought out. It was introduced earlier in the year by the state, very early in the year. And unfortunately, not to cast any shade on the New York State, but like some of the things that New York State puts out, they don't always put forth the adequate information to answer questions that we need answers to. This was one of them, but Ray Lynn, once again, I had asked personally and talked to her extensively about this because I wanted personally to make sure our volunteer firefighters and EMS workers in the town of Malta receive the benefits that they could and should. So Ray Lynn is here. If anyone has any questions, I know there are a bunch of options. Steve, I didn't know if you wanted to go through.
Well, yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I'd just
Sure,
summarize
absolutely.
for the board, and I do apologize that late today there was a minor revision after further review with Ray Lynn and just clarifying some things in the local law. It did go to the board. It is here also on the table as what would be revision 3. Just so the board understands, and Ray Lynn can correct me if need be, but in drafting this law, there's a few important decisions that you need to make. And the first of which, as at least I contemplated it, you'll see alternative 1 and alternative 2, is whether or not we want to include a special provision to protect unremarried spouses of firefighters or ambulance workers who either die in the active line of duty or who have had long-term 20-year exemptions. So it's the first decision is, okay, we're going to keep it just to firefighters, or are we going to allow unmarried spouses to get the exemption? So that's why there's two versions. And the reason I broke it out that way is because within the municipalities around the state, there are some difference of opinions with respect to that. Locally here, I think most of the other municipalities that have adopted it have included provisions for unmarried spouses. So that's the distinction between the two alternatives the board has. The other important decisions that the board can make, we are taking Section 466A of the real property tax exemption law and saying we want to opt into it. And they give you certain decisions you need to make. The maximum exemption that you can give is 10%. So each of these versions you have contemplates a 10%. And that's consistent with other municipalities in the area. And the thought behind that is if we're trying to attract volunteers to live in Malta, and this is one way to do so with this tax exemption, we want to give them what everyone else is giving. If we're giving less, maybe that defeats the purpose of it. But you as a board don't have to go up to 10%. Another important decision you have to make is when do they get the exemption? This one, in the spirit of the same rationale, or trying to accomplish promoting people that want to live here that are volunteers, starts at the earliest time, which is 2 years.
2 years.
You can go up to 5 years. So what I've prepared after review with Mark and Ray Lynn and reviewing other town ordinances, the county ordinance is trying to promote firefighters, ambulance workers, volunteers to reside in Malta and get this exemption. And 2 years being the earliest and at the maximum of 10%. And I've also included a provision that would allow for unmarried spouses, unremarried spouses. So the latest revision, which I did print out for the board, but sometimes it's hard to read if you have a printed out version, just to be clear, this is what I'm suggesting after final revisions would be revision 3, alternate 1. The board has that, the public has it as well. That would exempt the firefighters from 10% of town taxes exclusive of special assessment and special district taxes. And it would provide a lifetime exemption if you have more than 20 years of service, and it would provide those same potential benefits to unremarried spouses. The only difference for unremarried spouses is the 20-year exemption would carry on. The other one, it's not a 2-year, the state law requires a 5-year time period. So there's slight difference between an active firefighter can get the benefit in 2 years, and an unremarried spouse can only get it if the firefighter or ambulance worker had 5 years. So what the way the resolution is drafted, it's you guys first need to decide, are you comfortable with this? Now, this is somewhat accelerated. We spoke about it at the last meeting. You asked for some alternatives. This resolution would just set a public hearing, but because it's a local law, we'd have to be confident and comfortable with the language. If we need to change any of the language and it doesn't fit any of these alternatives, we'd have to, put it out the next month. But there is not, and Raylyn, correct me if I'm wrong, any reason we need to adopt today. But this is, lastly, as Raylyn has printed out, revised number 3 is also consistent with other exemptions that we have in the town of Malta with respect to how we treat special district taxes. So we're trying to keep everything, a level playing field if we have a senior exemption or other exemption. So I hope that helps explain why you had different versions.
I think it does, definitely, on my part anyway. as I think I've said from the start, I'm definitely a proponent of the 2-year, of the 10%, and of the unremarried spouses, as far as I'm
As am I,
concerned.
Mark. I join you in that.
I agree.
I do too.
Is there a reason then not to proceed? I mean, Raylan, we don't want to, if you have some more information that would maybe
No.
change our minds.
No, I'm in agreement with all of this. I think it's the best way to promote volunteer firefighter and ambulance workers. We're giving them the best benefit that we can put out to them. Just like with the regular veterans exemptions, when a spouse passes on, that spouse gets to keep their exemption. So I think every one of these options should be allowed.
So I would, it sounds like we recommend revision 3, alternative 1. And I would move the resolution to set a public hearing for July 31st.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you, folks, definitely. Thank you, Raylan. I appreciate all the work you've done on this, because I know I've been hounding you quite a bit, so thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is to appoint a new CERT team leader, as reported last week. Longtime CERT team leader Charlie Weintraub has stepped down. He's remained on the team, which is very good for us. But we now have a new CERT team leader, and I'm looking for her name on here, Christine Bourgeois. That's what it is.
So moved.
Second.
Bring her on board. Discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried? Thank you. So welcome aboard, Christine. Christine is listening. I don't think she's here tonight, so. Next item on the agenda is to approve the court clerk conference for September 17th through the 20th.
Second.
Discussion?
I don't know that it matters, but it says that it has 2 different dates in the resolution. Okay, that's good then? All right. Okay.
Turn it still.
Yeah, she's actually going to be instructing, I believe.
Got it. Okay. I just wanted to make sure we didn't
Good catch, Tim.
trip ourselves up.
All right, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to award a community center copier proposal and maintenance contract. You'll get a new copier.
So moved.
Sec.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to fill one of our vacancies we had as a building maintenance helper, Grace Bombard.
So, second?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Budget transfers.
I can speak a little bit about them because there is quite a high value one in there. The one that you see that's actually pre-noted number 3, due to the fact that the bond that we received for the Mangino property happened late in the year. It wasn't budgeted for 2023 budget, and it was noted, at the time of getting that bond that would happen. So this just includes a budget transfer out of fund balance.
Understood.
That difference.
The print, so there's is it a 6-month interest and then annually
Yep, so the.
principal interest?
Exactly, the big
Okay.
payment this year is for the interest on that.
And then the principal interest payment will be a year hence then?
Yeah, so because
Or the date of the sale, yeah.
Highway, the last payment was this year, it kind of offset a little bit what we actually owe for Mangino's in terms of what we budgeted for. So
Right.
yes, but there will be a small principal payment that this transfer would also cover.
Okay, thanks.
I'll move the resolution.
Second?
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the floor? Yes, ma'am. Yes, please.
I'm Tara Panesso from Maple Way. We have emailed back a couple of times. You didn't respond to my latest one, though.
Probably because I have about 20 in the queue right now. A lot of
Okay.
them, they're not about what you're concerned with, but they're there. I will answer you.
Okay, understood.
It gets
Anyway,
busy, believe it or not, in the
I'm
office.
sure. I mean, what happened tonight, it just seems like you were going to go through, Mark, excuse me, the short form of the comprehensive plan, or whatever way you want to talk about it. And in the interest of transparency and community involvement, I think that would have been really good. And then, because, the attorney, you keep saying that it's in the public record, but, we haven't felt like we've been included for the last few years. You understand that the citizens don't feel like they've been included in what's going on. So I think it would have been really helpful, to be able to go over something like that so we'd be a little bit more informed. It just seems like we're not being included enough. And so I think to move forward and do more of that would be good. But legal seems to get in the way and put up roadblocks, and that's what happened tonight. And I think that's too bad, because I think it would have been helpful for us to hear some more of that. I don't want to get in the weeds of what would happen if you did it, then what would happen after that. I just think it's not a good look. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kathy, you're back.
Yes, I'm one of those that likes to give out compliments, and I was remiss. Our luncheon today was a fried chicken dinner provided by the Golden Corral in Queensbury. He was part of the NDL, part of the Saratoga County Senior Luncheon a couple years ago, and he was so impressed with our group, how active we were. When I mentioned we were doing a chicken dinner, he said, "I'll do it." So that food came down from Queensbury in that traffic, and it was still hot. But I had to put a shout out to the Queensbury Golden Corral. Thank you so much.
Did a good job. And that was pretty good chicken too, by the way. Thank you, Kathy. Anyone else have anything? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Susan Nuttall. I'm from Luther Forest. Supervisor Hammond, I just want to thank you for your attempt to really involve us and let us know exactly what was going on. I'm disappointed and confused as to why that information could not be shared with us. And quite honestly, I'm not a lawyer, and I know that Mr. Hartzell and Mr. Gottman we don't really know what they're talking about when they're talking about all those things. So it just left me with an uncomfortable feeling. That's all I have to say. And one of the things that's been discussed over and over is transparency, and to me, that is a perfect example of what we've been talking about. But I want to thank you again for your attempt to do that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
My name's Laura. I'm Luther Forest also. I guess I just have one question. I did think we were coming here to hear more about the, comprehensive plan. So I just have a question, if I could ask. When was the EIS created that you are now basing this on? The lawyer had mentioned the EIS. What year was that?
Well, the original comprehensive plan and townwide generic impact statement was in 2005, but it's been amended and updated multiple times with most recent finding statements in 2020.
So you're basing it on the 2005 environmental impact statement, but it's been updated?
No.
Is that my understanding?
2020.
2020.
But it started with 2005.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? There being no other business, motion to adjourn.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed and opposed. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.